How are you? The mystery of Iranian uranium continues. We are conducting a survey right now to see what you think. Obviously, there's the pinned comment in the community. This is the survey. The first votes are already starting to come in. Thank you very much. Let's get into the details, the latest on what's happening in the world. But obviously, the big question here is, where is the uranium? Do they have it in one place? Is it accessible or is it underground? Especially if this nuclear program continues to operate. The source close to Galibaf, or sources close to this figure, the leader of Iran's parliament, say that this is a direct response to the seizure by the United States of oil shipments from Iran destined for China. They say it will have consequences. The Chinese government has already issued new regulations that allow the confiscation of assets belonging to any government or foreign company that disrupts its supply chain, or China. They are also going to apply, let's say, the same approach, right? And so, well, things are getting more complicated. Now, China is also saying, well, if someone affects my supply chain, then I'll also do what the United States has been doing, which is, well, confiscation, right? China will also be considering the US military restrictions resulting from the conflict with Iran while evaluating possible attacks on Taiwan. At this moment, that's what they say. Now, military strategists would say this is the ideal point considering they have less than half of their ammunition and missile arsenal above all. And this would generate an impact that would be very hard to sustain in the event that a war broke out between Taiwan, the United States, and China. A topic that obviously sounds unthinkable right now. The Pentagon said for the first time in a long time that right now China is not planning to attack Taiwan until next year. And I don't know if it's more of a wish or what, right? But in that sense, honestly, nobody knows. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen in that regard. But right now, today, we're talking to you about this topic because at this moment, Donald Trump is sending a message that's pretty unbelievable, right? A message in which he appears like this, just imagine, posted from Donald Trump's own account, right? It says, no more, Mr. Nice Guy, right? And well, he appears with a long gun with bombs everywhere. You know what the style is like, right? According to what's shown in this image, by the way, today on his social media, Donald Trump posted an image in which he basically says, it's time to wake up, right? By wake up, he means they should start opening the Strait of Hormuz. The President of the United States posted a message making it clear that his administration, but let's say, what a way to do it, right? What a style, huh? Honestly, it's amazing, isn't it? The showman, right? All the time. To say the least, right? The thing is, the President of the United States once again questioned the Iranian regime due to the ongoing failure to reach a peace agreement in the Middle East. Iran can't get organized, they don't know how to sign a non-nuclear agreement, they'd better wake up soon, he writes on his own social account, what's it called? Truth Social, right? That's what they call his social network? Meanwhile, moving on to more adult topics, let's say, right? I mean, topics for people who are a bit more mature in their attitudes. Well, what's drawing attention is the warning from the director of the UN Atomic Agency, who believes that the enriched uranium is in Isfahan, specifically in the facilities that have already been attacked before. It's important to remember that this agency has direct information from many of the nuclear engineers around the world. So there are ways to get information, let's say, before others do, even before entire countries do. Rafael Grossi stated that the IAEA even has evidence or satellite images that would show the effects of the latest US and Israeli airstrikes in the region. He assured that in that area, underground, part or maybe even all of the 60% enriched uranium materials could be stored. It should be remembered that it's not just 440 kilos of uranium enriched to 60%, but in addition to that, there are 9 tons of uranium at different levels, from about 3% to 15% according to their estimates. It should also be remembered that this is uranium as well. If enrichment continues above 7%, 15, 20, 30, whatever you want, it starts to be more for military use than for civilian use. Civilian medical use, for example, is around 3% and a little more for what nuclear plants use. But 60% like the Iranians had, according to what the OIA engineers confirmed. After all, who is the OIA or who are the engineers? In the end, they're representatives from 15 countries. At least in Iran, there were 15 countries that were able to observe what was really happening. Just like when the IAEA goes to Ukraine to see how Chernobyl is doing or how any other nuclear facility is, even in situations like Japan, there is usually contact with those engineers. TEPCO, the Japanese company, has been very secretive, but that's a topic we've already discussed extensively in the past. Rafael Grossi stated in an interview that the International Atomic Energy Agency has satellite images showing the effects of the latest US and Israeli airstrikes against Iran, and they continue to receive information constantly. According to those same images, they would show that not only is it possible that this facility, for example this one, could have enriched uranium, but there has also been recent activity. In other words, there has been movement almost since the war ended, those 12 days in June, do you remember? The image we're looking at was taken on February 1, 2026, and it shows that there's a new roof over a previously destroyed building. On that roof in Isfahan, Iran, according to what the Planet Labs satellite documents, it would show that there is significant activity in an area that was attacked in June. The satellite images of what has happened have shown that there are about 18 containers approximately. A tunnel near what they believe could be the Nuclear Technology Center in Isfahan. Well, actually, it is the Nuclear Technology Center of Isfahan. On June 9, 2025, just before the start of the war, it is likely that those containers were created and contained highly enriched uranium, and possibly those containers are underground in that area. It should be remembered that trucks were seen moving earth, building these kinds of roofs, and so on. So there has been movement since the summer of last year. Meanwhile, while they're trying to reach an agreement, trying to negotiate, there are several comments that catch my attention, and I'd like us to look at them in that regard. For example, what Pete Hesse, the United States Secretary of War, says.
President Trump, unlike other presidents, has had the courage to ensure that Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon, and he is unwavering in that. We have the best negotiator in the world leading that deal. The greatest challenge, the greatest adversary we face right now are the reckless, inept, and defeatist words of the Democrats in Congress and some Republicans. After 2 months, I remind you, after 2 months of a conflict, just in case I forget, and my generation understands how long we were in Iraq, how long we were in Afghanistan, how long we were in Vietnam. After 2 months, in an existential struggle for the security of the American people, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. We are proud of this effort. I am proud that President Trump had the courage to do it, and I hope to be able to share more about what our families have accomplished. So I thank you again for the opportunity to address this committee. I ask that God continue to watch over our troops who are in harm's way, and those who have fallen are always in our memory, and we fight to ensure their legacy. I look forward to answering this committee's questions.
I look forward to answering the questions, but that's how it started, let's say, as Pete Hesse himself mentions. And well, big greetings to the whole community. He says military-grade enrichment is above 90%. I mean, for nuclear weapons, yes, but from 20% it's already considered. Highly enriched uranium starts at 20%, yes. And from there, it's a concern because it can be used, for example, for nuclear reactors. So anything above 20% is considered military use. It doesn't have any other use above 20s, nuclear reactors, but more for nuclear propulsion, like for submarines, for example. For ships, it's 20%. Some weapons, missiles use it in the front part, let's say, in this kind of cone-shaped area. In the main part, they also use certain types of radioactive materials that make it much tougher when entering, for example, into bunkers. Well, I need to. But we won't go into details right now. But in fact, 90% is weapons grade. 20% is highly enriched. Yes. And 3 and 5% are already for civilian nuclear power plants. 0.7% would be used, for example, for high-density conventional ammunition. Or 0.7, and that's enough for ammunition. 0.7, 20%? You're talking about levels more like those used for nuclear engines. Because I have the whole list here, I don't have the whole list. This one was published by the same IAEA, and well, there they put exactly what level each one is at. Greetings to you, the high school, and everyone watching the live stream. Leave your comments and likes. Hi Valdo, how have you been? Greetings to everyone. Rafael Sonsol, how have you been? Very good. Blanca Barcelo, and to the whole community that's joining. Leave your like, share as well. And let's move on to other matters. Another comment that's being made. This pit that he makes. In this hearing that he had with Congress,
In being held accountable, he delivered billions in weapons to Ukraine, something that wouldn't have happened if Trump were president. President Trump believes he should have. Or peace between Russia and Ukraine that benefits both.
They failed to anticipate the current situation in Ukraine strategically. They overlooked it.
The Ukrainians have shown great courage, and I appreciate that now Europe is paying for the weapons, for any weapon that we provide.
All right, you have the floor. Thank you.
well, that's the comment. Look, interesting. Well, now he makes positive comments about Ukraine. They stand out because they're usually negative. It's a topic that also draws attention. Let's move on to other important matters as well.
How would you feel in this country if the world's biggest sponsor of terrorism had nuclear weapons that could be launched at your city? The United States and President Trump decided that this is completely unacceptable. That is an existential threat to the Middle East region, to the world economy, for the United States and for all our allies. He made the difficult decision to put an end to this risk. We could ignore it. Today everything is fine. Look, when you have cancer, everything is fine until you start chemotherapy, and then you're not fine anymore, but you're killing the cancer that would kill you. That's what we're doing right now. Before this turns into a metastasis and we have a nuclear-armed Iran, President Trump had the courage to say we're going to put an end to that. We will not allow the world to be subjected to that. And yes, he has been frustrated because he has received a lot of criticism and pressure from our European allies. Not from all of them, of course, but from many for doing that. I think he is well justified in that. And yes, we would appreciate more support and more backing for what we are doing. We are not doing this just for the United States. We are doing it for the world. But we are going to get through this. Iran will not get nuclear weapons. Things will return to normal in the Middle East and we will be in a much better position. But these are bumps and obstacles along the way.
Roces y obstáculos en el camino.
My mother is saying that now. Obviously, these statements that have been made regarding Iran are precisely aimed at first making people understand what is happening. Not only with the war in Iran, which was started without clearly explaining what was wanted or what the real objectives were, to the public, to most people, not the people who follow it closely or those who are more or less informed. Well, now this is happening because of this, because of that. Many people, a large part of the population, didn't know this and had other concerns. And in this situation, it's kind of a surprise for them. Like, why are we involved here if we weren't attacked? Wasn't there supposed to be an attack, or is it something about a future attack? Well, that's another issue. That doesn't convince a good part of the population, even many of the MAGA supporters, let's say the most hardcore ones, the most extreme. Let's say from the Trump side, right? This time, the Ministry of Energy, or the Minister of Energy, the Secretary of Energy, makes this comment. We're not going to try to understand what's happening with the Iran issue from the point of view of the White House, obviously. Meanwhile, I think an important comment is what General Dan has said. Dan Kane, because in the end, this general is looking at the operational side of the conflict. Listen to what he says about this situation. By the way, oil prices are crazy. Oil prices are honestly crazy. That's also a huge issue. Let's get into the details.
As president, my duty is to ensure that our civilian leadership has a full range of military options and understands the associated risks, so that those leaders who make the nation's toughest decisions can do so, and so I can offer my military advice in private. I owe the President, the Secretary, and Congress the truth at all times. My role model for this position is General George C. Marshall. His commitment to civilian control of the armed forces and to a nonpartisan military remains a constant benchmark and something I often try to emulate. I strive every day to emulate his candor, presenting the facts to our leaders and always telling them what they need to hear, not always what they want to hear. And once a decision is made, carrying it out with absolute dedication. That is the requirement. That is what our profession demands.
Well, there is General Dan Kane giving this brief explanation, and throughout the day we will see what else has been said in this hearing. Obviously, it's key, it's extremely important to understand what's happening in these congressional hearings, which in the end have to show and justify what they are doing and try to convince, on one hand, the Democrats and even the Republicans who are not very much in favor of the conflict. Let's discuss other important matters. What's happening worldwide? Notice that, well, the forest fires happening over there in Georgia, in Florida, in certain areas of the southeastern United States have drawn attention because it's not a region where you usually see this kind of activity. Let's go into the details of what's happening in this region of the world. Let's get to it. Notice that they're reporting a series of health issues. Mercedes, how have you been? Great. They're sharing what's been happening in Georgia, in different states of the United States, where in this area, by the way, there's a significant heat wave and there are tremendous fires. The control efforts have allowed for greater containment in several hotspots that are currently in Georgia. The threat of wildfires in the area remains present, and the progress made to get them under control is advancing very slowly. They say the little rain they've had, since what there has been, could help a bit to ease things in the coming days, but for now they say it's not enough to get them out of that situation. This is what the governor of Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp, said after touring the affected areas. The rain will not be enough, and unfortunately the fires could continue. They say that the risk is still ongoing. In parts of southern Georgia, the fires have even managed to break through natural barriers and have tested the resources of Georgia's own emergency services, so to speak, right? Well, pay attention to that issue. In some areas, there's already a lot of smoke being reported, and people say it smells like something burning. All around the Bradley County area and its surroundings, the fire has consumed, just to give us an idea, about 90 kilometers of land. 90 square kilometers, we're talking about that. 80 homes have already been destroyed in a rural, semi-rural area. According to the reports, the command team in charge has responded and achieved about 30% containment. Yesterday, it was at 6%. So, the progress in containment is significant, but there's still a long way to go. There's a person named Johnny Sabo, who is the director of, as far as I know, but I might not be saying it correctly. Johnny Sabo, director of the Federal Commission of Georgia, emphasized that this increase in containment is progressing, but it's moving slowly. There's still a long way to go. He says, I want to make that very clear. The risk of flare-ups is still very high due to the heat and lack of rain. It's unfortunate. There's still a lot to be done in this regard. Let's move on to other matters. Speaking of this topic, take a look at what's happening in Europe regarding the climate. They say that Europe is warming more than twice as fast as the global average. According to them, look at what we've seen. This is something we've been reporting for years regarding climate issues. What we've been able to see and the analyses from multiple studies aren't just the famous ones. Meta-analysis, where groups from all over the world, the best scientists, gather all the information and try to draw conclusions and results. And in these meta-analyses, What they've discovered is that there are areas that warm up more and others that warm up less. That is areas like here in Mexico, which is already very hot as it is. Luckily, the warming isn't accelerating as much as it is in other regions, in those where it's twice, 3 times, or several times higher. Unfortunately, the farther north or south you go, the more the warming accelerates. It's as if the central part of the planet, which is already hot, kind of says that's as far as it goes, it's limited. And so now it starts to warm up over here and it starts to warm up on this side. It's a very curious thing, but I'm explaining it in a very simple way, obviously. That's essentially what they've found. Let me explain the details of what I find. They go specifically into this study about Europe. The report reveals that Europe is warming at more than twice the rate of the global average. In the last 30 years, the planet's average temperatures have gradually increased at a steady rate of 0.27 degrees or 0.49 Fahrenheit. See? This was over the last 10 years. However, in the yearly European climate report, it shows that Europe has warmed twice as much to almost 0.60. Was it 0.27? Well, it's getting close to 0.60. This happened in the same 10 years when that average temperature increase of 0.27 was recorded across the whole planet. In Europe, it wasn't 0.27 but almost 0.60. Experts say that this rapid warming in Europe is causing a wave of extreme weather events, which are also related to an increase in deaths due to heat. They say that weather events increase deaths related to heat and wildfires on that continent. We're seeing something that shouldn't surprise us since we've dealt with it before. Well, I've been studying and looking at meta-analyses, like I said, and it doesn't surprise us in the sense that we've seen that it's true. Let's say the sea is warming up. What surprises me is the lack of awareness and especially the lack of prevention when it comes to this kind of situation. There are countries that already need to start adopting different styles of architecture, different ways of working across the board. There are areas where they say that transportation, for example, didn't have air conditioning or doesn't have air conditioning. First world countries, let's say. You lack enough ventilation because it wasn't required. Come on, you didn't need that much ventilation or air conditioning. And so now they're making important changes throughout this whole area, which shows. According to Samantha Burr, the strategic climate manager at the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, she states that the rise in temperatures is causing forest fires to start occurring. Widespread reforms in European countries? She also says that drought and lack of humidity in these regions are creating a very complicated situation when it comes to fires. The data collected from the Copernicus satellite, especially in 2025, show that last year was the third hottest year ever recorded in Europe's history. The average temperatures ranged around 10.4 degrees across the entire continent, just 0.30 degrees cooler than the warmest year, 2024. This causes, they say, almost all of Europe to experience temperatures much higher than normal levels for most of the year. There's also Anna Huck, who is a professor and expert in climate phenomena at the University of Reading. She says that 95% of Europe has already experienced above average temperatures just in the past year. So this, it's not just a feeling, it's not just that it feels hotter, it's not just a sensation. It's something that really has been happening gradually over the past 10 years and now, it's starting to become much more noticeable, let's say. Let's discuss other important things. Do you remember this story? An elderly lady who was rescued by a Ukrainian robot. There's this lady. She lives like many families, especially elderly men and women. She doesn't want to move from the front lines of the war. She's in the Russian-occupied area. It's being invaded. It's an area of Ukraine. So the Ukrainians, since it's in the zone, evacuate everyone, but usually the elderly don't want to leave. Until suddenly, when the war is very close, they leave on foot. The lady was walking alone on a road in the middle of the war. He says it started. Well, let's listen to what the lady says because that lady was saved by one of these robots. Look, there's the little robot on the edge. They're like small tanks for the wounded. You put someone on it and the robot moves on its own. Well, they move them. I mean, it has autonomous capability, but it can also be operated like a drone. So, you see, someone is watching it and can talk through the robot to people who need help, for example. Okay, so let's listen to what the lady says. She traveled for 2 hours along a route under fire between craters while she prayed.
The whole time the car was bouncing. Well, I thought, let it bounce, let whatever happens happen. Well, what does it matter? I keep going anyway, but I keep going. I didn't see the driver or anyone. I didn't see anyone, and I prayed every prayer I knew. You know, I cried so hard and prayed all the prayers. Even those sticks were all covered in blood. But God help me, I survived. That means there is a God in this world.
Well, he's talking about the bars. They're the bars she used to hold on to, and in fact, they're always stained because that's where the wounded climb in and are taken kilometers back from the front to be treated. So he brings a speaker, and through it, they talk to the lady. Plus, he was carrying a little message. I mean, when they saw her with an aerial drone, they sent the robot, rescued her, the whole process of going back and forth and everything. It took 4 hours. But the lady was able to get out safe and sound, right? And the curious thing, the anecdote here is that the robot arrived alone. I mean, it didn't come with a human, right? So, well, they thought maybe that was going to freak the lady out. But no, the lady just got fed up in the end. She saw it and said, no, I'm out of here, right? And she got on and, well, she was rescued. Let's move on to other important matters. Notice when it's hot, going back to the topic of the heat. Especially during the first days, and I say this because those of us who live in very hot areas already have experience with that, right? I mean, and surely many of you who live in hot areas like Mercedes, for example, who's over there in Tijuana, right? And those who are in California, those who are in Florida, in Texas, you understand perfectly well that the first days of intense heat, suddenly it can throw you off. You might feel bad, you might feel irritable, you could even get dehydrated, have a headache. But when you add that to a city like Monterrey, well, the traffic and all of this becomes a bit crazy, right? Yesterday I told you that when we came back for the live show that night, we ran into a lot of crashes, but it's not just the crashes, it's also it's about how people behave in general, how we behave, not necessarily in a rude way, but it's just that you're kind of, I don't know, you're kind of dazed, something like that, right? So this really caught my attention, and yesterday, one of the stories that went viral here, this was published by El Heraldo de Mexico, but it went really viral. It's this situation where suddenly that car, the brownish car that's over there, just suddenly felt like it. He wanted to and said, I'm going to drive the wrong way because I absolutely feel like it. And he went in to see what would happen. So obviously there's no way through. I mean, you have no other choice but to, well, move forward, right? I don't know at what point it occurred to him, well, there's the truck recording the front, like saying, hey, go ahead, even revving it up, like there's nowhere else to go. There's no way out. There's no other option. You have to go back and take that way and then see how you get back to the place. And you want to go, but you can't go against the traffic on an avenue, even if it's a small avenue like this one. Well, there it is. So it's like, I'm not moving from here, says the guy in the car, right? I mean, the other guy isn't moving either, and they stayed like that for a while. Both men were revving their engines. And at some point, because behind the truck, there are other trucks and other cars. It's not like, okay, I'll move aside and let this guy pass. No, you can't. Everything is against you. I mean, and this was the thing. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm getting ahead of myself. Or he had no choice but to go back, right? I mean, just go back and take the lane he's supposed to be in, right? That's it. Whoa, details like that. Many more. I mean, like how he discovers that little detail. Many more. I mean, really strange accidents. Really weird things, right? I mean, people walking down avenues. People just cross in the middle of the avenue, not at crosswalks or lights, like it's nothing. No. In the middle of avenues where there aren't any traffic lights. Yeah, just like that, suddenly. Well, a lot of really curious things happen. That's how the first days are. So if you ever come to Monterrey, that's what the first hot days are like. Don't be scared. That's just how it is sometimes. Let's move on to other topics. I imagine it happens during heat waves in Mexico City and similar places. They're not used to it either, and suddenly it's almost 40 degrees. I'm not sure if it ever actually reaches 40 degrees in Mexico City. Maybe never. I'm asking you, right? Francisco, who else is around here? Blanca is in Querétaro, right? Blanca. It's hot over there in Querétaro, isn't it? It's like, it's hot and warm, right? Okay. Let's move on to other topics. Thanks to Edwin. How have you been? Greetings. He says, how much is oil going up? How much is oil going up? Let's get into that right away since you're asking, okay? Let's talk about the oil craziness. No. Thing. Look at oil right now. It's simply $118, but it reached $119.94 up to $120. Do you remember the other records that drove the markets crazy last time? This point and this point, which is when the war started. Basically, when it got more intense. It's already at that level, but back then it went up and down right away. Now it went up and stayed there. Crazy. That time it went up. Crazy. I mean, and WTI is already at 107. This is the Brent we're looking at, and WTI is at 107, which is also extremely high for Texas crude. I'm curious just quickly about how the markets are reacting. Well, I still think it's mild. This is the reaction. It's a very small drop. This is the S&P 500 going up. And while this is a correction that's way too small to say that the oil effect is already in the S&P 500, I don't see it that way. It would really have to drop in a significant way for me to say it dropped like it has dropped on other occasions. I mean, how it has dropped in other moments, in other situations, but right now that's not what we're seeing. And the Nasdaq, let's look at the Nasdaq, which is the tech stocks. Well, it's the same. You see, that's the thing. No, I mean, it doesn't affect them. I don't know, but the point is that it's there. No, you don't see any effect. Unlike, for example, the Nikkei, which had a significant drop, although they also recovered. We saw that yesterday, right? I mean, the Nikkei, well, it's, 2 days down. This was yesterday. Sorry, this was on Monday, right? Yes, Monday. No, this is the... Let's see. This is because this is the... today's Wednesday, right? Yes, it happens to me. Okay, so it's Monday, then Tuesday and Wednesday. Here it is. Thank you so much, Anna. Who is Anna, right? Thank you so much, Anna, for gifting those memberships to the community. One went to Abismo and another went to Beto Barba. Awesome. So congratulations to Beto and Abismo. Congratulations and thank you so much, Anna, for gifting those memberships to the community. Thank you so much to those who support the community and the channel this way. Obviously, many thanks to Mercedes and to the whole community that supports this channel. You can do it very easily, by giving it a like. But if you want to support the channel financially and help us to be here to improve the equipment to move forward, right now, our goal is to make a change. We don't know how long it's going to take us because what we need here for the PC is pretty intense and it's really expensive, the prices. But anyway, we're looking to change the PC because this one can't handle much anymore. But I'm grateful to the whole community that supports us. That way, the channel not only becomes sustainable, but we can also be 100% dedicated to this. So thank you very much for having a membership, for supporting us like that. If you can't, hey, it's okay. I know that most people can't, but for those who do, I'm very grateful. And for those who can't, help us in other ways by liking, sharing. That's important too, obviously, right? Well, Sol Garcia, how are you? Dora Blanca, great. It says today unlike yesterday. It's not windy, but it's cool in central Tijuana Beach. And honestly, even cooler, right? And even cooler because this time I think it's really, let's see. No, it won't let me. Okay, it won't let me see the whole comment, but if not, you can see it. It says, and I'm not going. Yes, like that, or else we get crazy and reckless. I already know. Yes. When it's really drastic, it just comes out. No. Also, on days when it's quote-unquote cold, not that it's really cold, but it's like 10 degrees the first day, everyone stays in their houses and almost nobody goes out. You visit parks and find them empty. After a few weeks, the parks are still full despite the same temperature. Unlike the first day's shock, you get used to it. If we decide not to go out, we just stop going out. But anyway, let's move on to other important matters as well. This photo was taken at the hotel. It's a selfie taken by this professor who launched an attack in the middle of the conference. Or rather, at this event in Washington with Donald Trump's journalists and other journalists. I mean, this event took place at the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. Well, the one who fired took this selfie, this image where you can see he's carrying a weapon, like in this chest holster. He's carrying it. A knife. He's carrying another weapon on his waist. I mean, how is it possible that all those kinds of weapons were brought in? Where is the president, the secretary of the treasury, the secretary of war, the vice president, the secretary of state? 500 top journalists from all the major media outlets. Or how is it possible that one individual gets in there? He acts like nothing's wrong, like he can just stay there without any problem, the whole thing. It's really amazing, isn't it? I mean, but at the airport they even take your sneakers, right? They check everything, don't they? Basically, right? I mean, at the airport it's maximum security, and at these kinds of events, apparently not, right?
Cole Allen, este personaje,
Accused of trying to take out American politicians, maybe even President Trump, at the White House Correspondents' event, he took a selfie. This selfie was taken in the mirror, armed to the teeth, in his hotel room minutes before the attempted attack, according to what the prosecution said today. According to the court document in which the prosecution requests preventive detention for the accused, Allen used his phone to take a photograph of himself in the mirror in his room at 8:03 p.m., according to what has just been reported. I mean, really, this is unbelievable too, right? I mean, how is it possible that this is happening now? They're already showing images of what it would look like or what the evidence would be, let's say. Of the weapons they were carrying, those are the ones. At least some of them, right? These are just the weapons, like they said, the knives, right? They're carrying 4 knives, or tactical weapons, or tactical knives, or I don't know what they call them over there. But anyway, that's part of what he was carrying. He was carrying what seems to be a kind of semi-short or sawed-off shotgun. That's when they have it modified to look smaller. Well, the thing is, he was wearing a black shirt, black pants, and a red tie. He seemed to be carrying a small ammo bag, a shoulder holster, and a sheathed knife, as well as wire cutters too. These right here, these are wire cutters. He had that on him too. It's good, part of what was or what has been shown by the prosecutor's office. Meanwhile, in other matters, the head of the Pentagon revealed before Congress that the United States has already spent $25 billion on the war against Iran. That's the information. They have provided it. He defends the request for a historic military budget for next year in a tense session with the House Armed Services Committee, where we just saw this exchange taking place. This moment, talking about Trump's strategy with Iran, with Ukraine, etc. It's also part of what's happening right now. And well, let's move on to other important matters as well. On that topic, regarding the Pentagon's budget, there's a person named Jules Hortz III, who is the Undersecretary. He is the supposed Undersecretary of the House of Representatives. In other words, he is a person who is basically focused on trying to understand what the spending looks like. Not the whole issue of war funding, that's part of his duties. According to what he was able to say, the bill is $25 billion, and they are mostly focusing on the issue of critical munitions, the maintenance of naval operations, and the replacement of equipment after 2 months of combat. Also, by the way, they arrested another one, but this is happening more and more often. But Germany arrested another alleged spy for Russia. He's not there. Well, this is drawing attention because according to the accusation, they have arrested Sergei K. Reports say he sent various information to his liaison officer, including details on Germany's military aid to Ukraine. They have also been sending information about the German arms and defense industry, particularly about companies that develop drones and robots. In addition, the Kazakh citizen is said to have sent and photographs of public buildings in Berlin and of military convoys on highways, including those of NATO member states. That is, even the movements of NATO. Just imagine, both of you. He seems pretty crooked, especially since there are other cases with less evidence, but in this guy's case, it really looks like they have. By the way, do you also know who is going to appear before Congress? This lady named Pan Bondi. She is not going to appear. The House Oversight Committee about what? About a topic they didn't want her to appear for, about the Epstein case. Even though she is no longer the Attorney General, she still has to appear. The Democrats reportedly filed a resolution for civil contempt against the former Attorney General for not appearing at the deposition. So she will be obligated to appear, and under oath she will have to speak. What she saw, right? The announcement of the date came shortly after the committee's Democrats announced that they had filed a resolution for civil contempt against Bondi after she refused to appear for her deposition earlier this month. The dismissal happened because they didn't want her to appear as a prosecutor. Yes. So well, there's the pretty interesting back and forth. We'll keep seeing details about how the issue develops. In the meantime, take a look at this image. This is also good. Yesterday we showed the example of this robot, but today there are more details. Take a look at this image. It's the robot's first day on the job. Don't get it fired. If things are going to be this slow, well, that's just great, right? Well, just imagine right there with... And then he starts greeting people. Look, he sends it. I'm not sure if it's for core, if they're tests, or what's happening. But look, I mean, he throws the package. He keeps looking at the package, this thing, right? And he starts waving goodbye to it. Just imagine. No, well, I don't know, right? I mean, in the end, they say they don't have staff, that they don't want to hire people from other countries. So, well, the thing is that this little robot, or these test robots for the airlines in Japan, still seems slow. This is at the... I mentioned it the other day, right? This is Haneda Airport, right? That's the only one that's going to have that for now as a test, right? They're going to experiment with those robots to see if it works out for them, right? Well, it was kind of interesting, right? Seeing the little robots like that. Let's move on to other topics, which are also important. Look, let me tell you about this story. You might remember this doctor, a Spanish doctor who is very well known around the world because the news went global. He published a study, a scientific study, in which he made a major breakthrough in the fight against pancreatic cancer, right? I mean, a really tough cancer, right? Tremendous. The Spanish scientist Mariano Barbic is drawing attention because the article was withdrawn. The article had already been published in journals. Suddenly, the Academy of Sciences withdraws it, right? Barbic's article about advances in fighting cancer. They withdraw it and everyone is like, what's going on? What happened? Well, that's when people start saying that this is because of certain interests, right? Or that the document, the breakthrough, was so important that they didn't like it. The US National Academy of Sciences decided to withdraw it from their scientific journal, PNAS. PNAS, right? It's very famous in scientific circles. The article was published by researchers, including Spaniard Mariano Barbic and other scientists, right? About the breakthrough in fighting pancreatic cancer, they claim, after detecting a significant conflict of interest. Well, it was withdrawn. The Academy, according to reports from the Spanish newspaper El País, FA, and other news agencies, confirmed that it was decided to withdraw the article after finding that the conflict of interest had not been disclosed at the time of submission, since Mariano Barbic and two of the co-authors, Balsic Iliaki and Carmen Guerra, have financial interests in Vega. Oncotargets, yes. So supposedly these doctors would also have a financial interest, right? So that has to be declared beforehand, right? Supposedly those are the rules. Well then, by not saying that they also have financial interests in this scientific breakthrough, they basically said no. I mean, if you have interests, like you were also kind of part of the industry, so you're treated differently, so to speak. The journal published the retraction of this article and reported that the editorial policy of PNAS states that Academy members who have conflicting financial interests or other types of interests that could be considered as significantly influencing their objectivity or that create an unfair competitive advantage are not published. They are not given exposure. I mean, many of these scientists are also partners in the companies that are developing a breakthrough, right? So suddenly, if you are a partner, then you are also part of the business, right? And that could also leave them out this time. That's the justification they're giving. I don't know if it's because of another interest or some other reason, but Barbic's team at the National Cancer Research Center in Spain published in that journal the results of a research project that allows them to eliminate the most common pancreatic cancer in mice, ductal adenocarcinoma, with a combined therapy of 3 drugs that prevents the appearance of resistance and has no side effects. In other words, a big breakthrough on the subject, but right now it's still uncertain. That means they're going to have to review this more carefully by other peers, by other scientific groups. Knowing that those who published it supposedly have a financial relationship with this breakthrough. Yes, well, that's at least what is explained or what they have implied. Another issue that also draws attention is that the United States has already started military operations. Notice this topic because it seems like it's dormant for a while and then suddenly becomes active again. And that's a constant in this issue between Cuba and the United States, isn't it? It seems like one day that issue flares up and then the next day it does again. I mean, it seems like this whole situation about a possible US intervention in that country is moving very quickly. Look, it's being reported that there's a deployment toward Cuba. The technology is getting more and more advanced. The United States has begun military operations near Cuba using drones, AI, and naval patrols. The deployment of technological resources is a response to increased surveillance over key routes and raises diplomatic tension in the Caribbean. The United States is believed to have launched the exercise today. No, actually, since yesterday, yes, the announcement and the start happened yesterday. No, the start was, well, they announced it yesterday. The start of operations in the area, I mean in the surrounding area, so to speak, right? According to the report, the United States Southern Command designed maneuvers to expand the range of maritime patrols off the coast of Cuba. This is very similar to the operation off Venezuela's coast. In the days prior, satellite platforms and intelligence experts have detected the presence of unmanned systems, some of which have been operating for several hours. It was photographed in southern and western Cuba, carrying out surveillance and reconnaissance tasks along the corridors. The key days of the Flex 2026 deployment were a comprehensive test. Satellites and manned experts, among the manned ones, some of them have been operating for hours and have detected activity during that time. On previous missions, some manned experts were present along with satellite specialists.
Comando del Sur, ¿verdad? Mismo comando.
He's the one who went there to Venezuela, the one who met with Maduro on January 3rd. So, well, they're the ones making these moves. There have also been movements toward boats in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, even movements with drones here in Mexico too. By the way, it's not another topic related to drug trafficking, but that movement has also been seen around here. Meanwhile, the Chinese government is limiting the use of drones in Beijing. Drone mania is already too much. The excessive use of civilian drones, people buying their drones and flying them and doing who knows what. Well, this is already becoming a matter of restrictions. China is going to ban the sale of drones in Beijing for security reasons, since users will have to apply for a permit to fly these devices in the capital according to a new regulation. And also, it will take effect starting next Friday, so this week it goes into effect this week. It will be prohibited to send unmanned aerial vehicles known by the Spanish acronym VANs to Beijing, as well as 17 essential components. They also won't be allowed to be sent there. Residents who use drones will have 3 months to register their devices at police stations. So, do you want to use a drone? Well, you have to register at the police station, and it's obviously a long process. The airspace in the city. It already has 22 million inhabitants and will be closed to drone flights without prior approval from the authorities, and fines are expected to reach up to $1,400 as well as confiscation of the devices in case of violation. So, Well, if you're over there, don't go flying another one, basically. Not like you have namesake Jose, like several Jose's from here. Get out. How have you been, Jose Antonio? For those who are named Jose, no, it didn't happen to them. And also to those who, it depends on where you live, right? But here at school, it was like in every school I've been to, almost all of them, there were like 5 or 6 Jose's or more, right? You just don't realize it. Many people miss that Jose Carlos is called Carlos, Jose Juan is called Juan, and so on. Or only some Jose's, like in my case, they call us Pepe, right? And then it just sticks, like the Pepe of the group, so to speak, right? Greetings, hello, he says. Now Blanca is talking there and everything. How has Rebecca been? Also, greetings, hello. Check out Rebecca's comment, which isn't... I insist, I think they're bots, not drones. I'll greet her anyway, even if she's not one. It says in the comment, she said hello. I don't know why the heck, but you've noticed that she's already commented. Sometimes she shows up in every live stream. Several comments saying exactly the same thing. She said hello. Have you noticed that detail? And if you scroll back and up, you'll see several. She said hello, she said hello, she said hello. I mean, it's not correct to say she said hello, it's just hello, right? She didn't say hello. So I don't know what it's about, but it could be. And what some people have told me here is that they could be AIs that leave a record showing they're active or something like that. But anyway, it stands out to me. I don't know what it could be, but this is obviously not, no, it's not very normal. It's something that's been happening for months now, but it's curious. Suddenly there are 5 or 6 users saying the same thing throughout the whole live stream. He said hello, that's all he said. No, they don't say anything else. This is strange. I don't know, Diablo. How have you been? Diablo0852. Greetings. How have you been? Let's move on to another matter, he says. But the presence of men, of the most powerful man, all the floors should have been super secure. Yes, exactly. I mean, exactly. All the floors must have been supervised. And investigated, look. I mean, that's the kind of security they do for that. I was at a COP event, one of those events that are organized where everyone goes for environmental issues at COP number 19. I don't know, 19, the one that was held in Cancun. Off the coast of Cancun, there were Mexican military ships. To get access as a journalist, you had to, 15 days before, do everything, give all your information about who you are, and sign. They're going to investigate you. They investigate you. Who knows who it will be, what international agencies investigate you, just to see if you're not someone involved in trouble or things like that, right? And it was like that with everyone. I mean, all the people who were going, everyone was investigated at least 15 days before to be able to access an event, which was organized by the UN, right? And at that time, I was working for Discovery Kids, right? We were making some documentaries for Discovery Kids. And for Animal Planet and for several others, it was like a group of channels and they hired me to make some documentaries, right? And we asked for permission there. He asked me, do you want to go to the event? I said, well, yes, of course, right? I thought we were going to record inside the event. And he just told me, I mean, he asked me if I wanted to go because he knows that since it's Discovery, they were going to give him permission. He just told me, he said, record whatever you want. No. You don't have to record if you don't want to, since it wasn't about the event. We planned to record outside, in the jungle, and other places. Recording crocodiles was a lot of fun. He said, if you want to go to the event, let's go, even just for half a day. You'll get to see it, see the presidents, and experience things you normally wouldn't. I didn't respond, but I wanted to. That was how he gave me some freedom. And so I already had the credential and I went to the event and everything. I was there in that group where all the journalists are crowded together who, by the way, don't get along at all. Elbowing, they yell at you, they push you. I mean, it's like being in the jungle. And no, I mean, everything looks like it's apparently very organized. No, it's not organized at all. And that's where it happened. Well, all the politicians of the moment were there. I mean, yeah. It was a really cool event. But what I mean is that the security was super mega exaggerated, like over the top for everything. It's an international event in Mexico, or whatever you want to call it. Here, it's an event where there are, well, only big names, and it wasn't like that. And in the capital, not in what you'd expect to be a safe area for politicians. No, honestly, it doesn't seem strange to me that they don't clear people out over that or not. I don't know, it seems really strange to me. Honestly, I'd even start suspecting other things, right? It just seems odd. No, I don't even see it as possible. No, something like that shouldn't be possible. I don't think it's possible. In fact, that's how I'll say it. I don't think it's possible. Or it happened that way. It makes me think that it's because it was meant to happen that way. I mean, you know what I mean? Well, it's strange. At least it's strange. Well, let's move on to other interesting topics as well. Well, it's a curious story, but also, well, extremely strange. It's about a Mexican man who had to plead guilty because he was pretending to be a border agent. From the United States, I mean, a border patrol agent, he had the full uniform. He had a truck just like the ones the border patrol uses. He put a license plate on it, kind of crooked, but it looked like a federal agent's plate. He added antennas that weren't connected to anything. They didn't transmit, but it made him look convincingly like Border Patrol. And he was driving around in the United States like it was nothing. On several occasions, Border Patrol agents saw him, greeted him, and he greeted them back. To the point that there were times when there was an operation going on. When they needed help and saw him nearby, they stopped asking because they assumed he would help, but instead he just walked by, leaving everyone wondering what was wrong with him. Then at one point they find him and ask, "Who are you?" It turns out he's not even from the United States. He's Mexican, but he dressed like Border Patrol and acted like Border Patrol, distracting the agents. A Mexican who, by the way, lives in the United States. He pleaded guilty to constantly impersonating a Border Patrol agent and following federal agents, according to reports. The story is strange, and we need to wait for the trial to learn why he did this and what happened. It's curious. According to reports, his name is Jaime Alvarez. According to reports, he admitted earlier this year that he had been following a Border Patrol agent while driving through a San Diego neighborhood, according to the Southern California U.S. Attorney's Office. Prosecutors say that Alvarez's black Ford F-150 truck was a model often used by federal agents. He had a license plate holder with the words "Federal Truck" in small letters, although the word "Federal" was misspelled, by the way. He also put a Border Patrol sticker on the windshield and had communication radio antennas that didn't work. According to the complaint, there were also handcuffs hanging from the rearview mirror, as if to give the impression that he was a law enforcement officer, let's say. The agent aborted a mission. When someone saw Alvarez coming, they thought he was an agent and would help, but that wasn't the case. He wasn't an agent. When the real agents confronted Alvarez, he started yelling at them, started shouting obscenities, and demanded that the immigration agents leave the Linda Vista community, saying they are not wanted there. It was in some way I imagine it was to distract or to support, to migrants, right? I mean, like pretending to be from the Border Patrol, but really to help the migrants in some way. I don't know, right? That's just my opinion, but I don't know what happened. It should be investigated. Later on, they realized he had other fake badges, like he also had a fake FBI badge, for example. I mean, maybe he's involved in some other shady stuff, right? Who knows? Who knows what's going on? But he already pleaded guilty, obviously also to charges of illegal possession of firearms, his federal public defender. He hasn't responded to emails from the media to at least interview the lawyer to try to understand what this individual was up to, what he was involved in. But anyway, we don't know, honestly. I mean, what is clear is that obviously he's going to spend some time in jail. It's not an issue. Now, California has authorized the testing and commercial deployment of autonomous trucks, which have already been approved for some time in certain places and for certain uses. Autonomous cars in California, even taxis and things like that in certain places, right? But now the deployment of trucks to transport 4.5 tons is going to be authorized. The regulations in effect since April since this month, impose requirements for supervision, incident control, and technical validation for companies seeking to implement automated technology in the transportation sector. In other words, the procedures, the laws are already in place, let's say, so that it can be applied, so that a transportation company or simply a company that wants to have its own autonomous trucks can have them under very strict laws and all that, but it's going to be there. Well, that's going to be possible now. The new regulations from the California Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, already allow or permit manufacturers to test and deploy heavy-duty autonomous vehicles on state routes. This regulation removes the previous ban on driverless vehicles weighing more than 4,536 kilograms. In other words, the vehicle can now weigh more than 4,500 kilos, which basically means trucks. So, before you could have a self-driving car if the car weighed less than 4 tons. Now it can weigh more. I don't know if they have a limit, I suppose, right? But, well, you would have to read the full rule. No, but they say that each phase requires a minimum of 809 kilometers. The main change states that the manufacturer must start tests with a safety driver. First, continue with tests without a driver, and finally request authorization. So the first test is 804 kilometers. That's 500 miles. No, wait a second. 500,000 miles, Impressive. Yes. And then after that, first 500,000 miles with a driver next to it. In case something happens, the driver grabs the wheel. He controls it. And then 80,467. First, it's 800,000 kilometers, which is 500,000 miles. And then after that, 80,000 kilometers. It then goes down to heavy vehicles that can already drive by themselves without supervision. Yes. And then after that, it goes down. I don't think so. But first you have to pass the test. With a driver, let's say a ghost driver, so to speak, the authorities can impose additional limits or revoke permits if they detect risks, if they see a risk. The permit also ends. Obviously, it's interesting, right? Because, well, if it works there, let's say that such a company manages to get its trucks, machinery, and so on to work autonomously and incidents are kept to a minimum, right? If they achieve that, there are fewer incidents than a typical transportation company. That will be distributed to the United States and the world. It will be distributed everywhere because it seems like, hey, the risk can be reduced. I don't know. That will depend. Obviously, it's a huge topic because, well, maybe it will reduce jobs in the transportation and driver sectors, but it will increase other types of jobs. Well, it's a topic that could come up in the next few years. Let's move on to other important matters. There was a 4.7 earthquake, and I know that's not a very high magnitude, but the area does catch my attention. This would be in Nevada, a 4.7 that would have been felt in the north of Las Vegas. By the way, greetings to the community that watched us over there. The earthquake would have been felt, at least in the north of Las Vegas, because it was very shallow. We're going to say it was about 6 kilometers deep, which is shallower than the usual depth of 10 or more. That's the most common. On this occasion, it's shallower than normal than usual, and this means that possibly those who come from that side may have felt it here. Well, they'll let us know. Let's see if we can see it, but look, it must be this one. Look, this earthquake. It shows it here, shallower, look. That one that's there in blue. To the north of Las Vegas, look. It says this was a 0.4 earthquake 4 kilometers deep in Alamo, Nevada. It's about 100 kilometers from Las Vegas. Here is Las Vegas and here is the earthquake. Well, let me know if you felt it, please, if you are over there in that area. And well, it's also part of what has happened in the last few hours. Other matters. Notice that there is a trade agreement with the United States, or rather, there is no trade agreement between the United States and Canada. And here the question I have for you is, do you think the issue will work out? Will it be renewed, or is it just going to be the United States? See. And this thing with Mexico, and they leave Canada out. The problem is that right now, they're not getting along well with Canada. The surprising part is they seemed unlikely to get along with Mexico, but they've actually been getting along well. But the risk is with Canada right now. The trade agreement that binds North America is quietly facing its greatest strain since it was created, putting the stability of one of the planet's most integrated manufacturing economies at risk. What is happening between Canada, Mexico, and the United States is a huge relationship when it comes to manufacturing products worldwide. Well, at one point, Donald Trump said it's the most important trade agreement on the planet, where what he wanted was for North America, Mexico, Canada, and the United States to become the most important economic zone on the planet, right? That's the concept, that's the idea. It's also part of the global scene. That's the whole moment that people want to experience. But honestly, things have gotten out of hand for Trump himself. His own rhetoric, his constant attacks on Canada, have already created an impact that seems difficult to stop. In fact, I'll tell you right now what Germany is saying because there's also a clash with Germany. It's similar to what he has with Canada, kind of. The mandatory joint review of the treaty requires that all three countries make a decision before this July. What's going to happen in the coming years? I mean, is it going to, let's say, decide what's going to happen with this situation, if the agreement will continue for another decade or more years, or if it needs to be renewed, or if it will end? So, what's going to happen? One of the main disputes is that Washington wants China to use Mexico or Canada as a backdoor to access the North American market. In other words, Washington wants to prevent China from using Mexico or Canada to enter the US markets. The US approaches to curb China, but it's also complicated because in the end, both in Canada, in Mexico, what's happening is that a lot of products are coming in and people are liking them. I don't know. Whether it's technology, chips, or products you often don't even realize are from over there. Curtains and furniture and a bunch of other things that suddenly you don't even notice, but they're from China. No, at the end of the day, Canada and Mexico aren't willing to completely shut China out either. I mean, they have put up some obstacles, but more for local things like shoes here in Mexico that they don't want to be sold. Shoes from elsewhere impact those made here in León, Guanajuato, and so on, right? I mean, those kinds of details are to protect local industries, but other than that, Mexico is very open when it comes to technology, for example, right? Just like there was trouble with Japan at one point. I mean, it's true when Japan started making cars and suddenly Nissan came out, right? Which other ones? Well, Toyota, all those brands, right? I mean, when the first ones started coming out. Japan went through its early years like that, but very quickly became the world's 5th largest automotive power. I mean, it rose very fast, and in the United States, it started to be the same as now, freaking out about China. Didn't they start putting tariffs on them and all that? Even so, they couldn't stop them. I mean, and the American car brands started copying certain things the Japanese were doing, for example. No, Japan wasn't used to it. They didn't have it. No warehouses for parts. What they did was have each part arrive and be used right away. I mean, they programmed everything so perfectly. Everything worked like clockwork. That didn't happen, so by not having warehouses like, hey, store it, hey, this, and all that generated more costs, more staff, more of this, so these are things that the Japanese have to have perfect. Another thing was that the Americans decided, well, the parts arrive, we have to test a certain number of parts to see if they're good and all that. Japan responded, no, I won't test every arriving part. I'd rather ensure parts are perfect from the start. So it was refined, of course, with mistakes and everything, but at first there were mistakes and then things improved, but it was refined so that the parts would be perfect. From the beginning, they didn't have to do tests, or if the part arrives, it's because I already know that this supplier is the ideal one, the perfect one. And the part is going to be 100% reliable, there can't be any mistakes there. So, imagine, they didn't have to do any tests. The part arrives, the part is perfect and goes straight to the factory. It's not like it went to a pre-warehouse or a separate facility. It just arrived at the warehouse and the next day it was used. Things were always moving through that warehouse, so you didn't need extra warehouses or staff. Those details were later applied to other countries, including the United States. At first, they were scared, thinking that Japan is finished. People now think the same about China. They don't want it. It's the same. I understand that. You can't just open up like that. I do understand that if you open up too quickly, you create a problem that can later turn into a very serious issue. I mean, you can't open up, especially not with China, so quickly. Because there are so many of them and they produce very quickly and produce well, and that's a problem. So, yeah. Well, that's the issue. Let's move on to, well, it's in question. If he leaves, will the agreement survive? That's the thing. Who knows? In the meantime, they're already starting to report an increase in gas prices. Right now, the price of gas keeps going up. The United States reached $4.23 per gall on average, because I know in California people will say, hey, but here it's $6. Yeah, well, yeah, that's how it is. But here we look at the average gas price. The United States reached the average. We have to remember, over there they have Telele, but it's not like wrestling. Here in Mexico we have Telele, which is wrestling. There, AA is the one in charge of monitoring oil prices. According to the reports, this increase went up to 4.23. According to ALA, it's the annual record that reflects, they say, a situation marked by an energy crisis. Well, now we know why. Yes. Look at the following. It keeps going up, the price is still high. If it keeps going like this, we're talking about $120 soon. $118. Let's see how Asia opens later this afternoon. So, when we're on the afternoon broadcast, we'll be able to see what oil is at and what the consequences will be. We'll analyze it today during the afternoon broadcast. What are the consequences of oil being so high in the short, medium, and long term? What happens if it goes up to $150 or even $200? I mean, there are obviously different consequences, and the probability of it happening is there. I mean, it is. So what do you do? I mean, on one hand, are you really going to negotiate it? I mean, what are you going to do? How do you negotiate? What are you even going to negotiate to begin with? No, if you don't want to negotiate, then no, there isn't. It's complicated. Meanwhile, it's also being announced that Russia and London are basically on the verge of a complete break at that level. Let's get into the details. We'll be covering that topic, but just quickly reminding you that we're here. Every day we go live to talk about what's happening in the world and discuss international news. We also talk about science, we talk a little about strange things, about what's happening on the planet, and so on. I don't know what else. We're here talking every morning and night. We also have a live conversation there. Many thanks to Ben and Leonardo. Another thing Japan did was make sure that parts weren't just made for one specific car, but that the same parts could be used in the same model. Ah, that's interesting. So those parts could be used for 2 or 3 other models or something like that. Is that how it is, Leonardo? How have you been, Gabby? Very good. Thank you so much, by the way, to those who send us a super chat, to those who send us a membership. A big thank you. All of that really helps a lot. They're good, and they're the ones who make this channel possible. So thank you very much. It's an informative channel that's very connected to the community. And thank you so much for allowing us to be here. Really, thank you so much to Edwin, to Ben, to Anna Hughes, obviously to Mercedes, to the whole community. Great. Let's address other important matters too. Tension is rising between the United Kingdom and Russia to a level that hasn't been seen before. The Russian ambassador to Great Britain, Andrei Kelin, has recently participated in a series of interviews in which they claim that the United Kingdom and Russia are basically already at a breaking point. Thank you. London revoked the accreditation of a Moscow agent. Thank you. You can probably imagine why the Starmer administration has reacted after the measures taken by the Russian authorities weeks ago in the midst of an almost complete breakdown of bilateral relations. In other words, diplomats are viewed with suspicion. The United Kingdom expelled a Russian diplomat today in retaliation for Russia's recent expulsion of a British official. The Foreign Commonwealth Office. Not the entire eastern region of the United Kingdom. Well, they say that this British official and the subsequent smear campaign that has been taking place in Russia against the United Kingdom have also had effects within London. This behavior is totally unacceptable and we will not tolerate either harassment or intimidation of our diplomatic staff, according to what the foreign minister said in a statement. We strongly condemn, he says, the unjustified decision. Russia last month expelled another British diplomat and the malicious public smear campaign that followed, says the British government spokesperson in a statement. Meanwhile, in the poll we have today, this is the result so far. Let me show you the result on the screen. You can participate. Obviously, it's in the community, Pepe Leave here on the channel. It already has some good initial votes and the community says that. Well, the question is, what is Iran hiding? They've already moved the uranium, 53% say. They think the uranium has already been taken somewhere else. It's hidden, it's spread out in other places. 16% say that Iran can already make nuclear weapons. Another 16% say that Iran can already make bombs. Well, that's repeated, isn't it? That's wrong. There's a mistake. Yes, there's a mistake. The question was repeated and it's all pressure, so should we add them up? 16, 16, that way we'll have the percentage, right? 32% think that the nuclear weapons already exist and that it's all pressure from the United States. Well, that's what they're saying there. Let's move on to another important matter as well. Let's move on to other interesting matters happening in the world. It turns out someone has died. Roger Sweet is the creator of He-Man. You remember He-Man, right? From He-Man, right? Him. The most powerful man in the universe. What's his name? I don't know what's up with this guy. Let's see if I can put him up on the screen. This guy is the one who does the voice, the designer. Is he the voice actor or is he? No, he's not the voice actor. He's the designer. No, he's not the designer. Yeah, I thought he was the voice actor, but no, he's the toy designer. I mean, he's the one who created the toy. The crazy thing is that he creates the toy and then the story is invented afterwards. I mean, it's not the other way around. That's not the case with He-Man. Back then, in the 80s, the trend was to make toys first and then sell the story. That's how it was. Okay, well, that's it, Talman, that's it. Strong guy with his tiger, hey, but now it has a story now, right? Roger Swift was the toy designer who brought He-Man to life and laid the foundations for what they call the Masters of the Universe franchise. He may have passed away yesterday. He died at his care center. He was 91 years old. His wife Marlene Swift confirmed his passing to the American media outlet TMZ. The cause of death has not been revealed, but considering his age, you can imagine. No, the point is that The Independent reported that Swift's health had already been deteriorating for some time after he suffered a fall while walking alone. The accident caused him 2 brain hemorrhages and severe bruises. He was admitted to the ICU, that's intensive care, right? Well, the intensive care unit. And since he was considered at high risk of suffering new falls, the doctors determined that he couldn't return to his home in Lake Washington, where he lived with Marlene, his wife. He spent the last few months in the Specialized Care Center for Memory Disorders, where he died peacefully, according to his wife. The cost of his stay was $10,000 a month or more, an amount that was beyond the income of these people. So being the creator of these designs doesn't mean they're millionaires or anything like that, as they say. Well, no, they can't afford it. No, they can't afford to pay for this kind of care. There was a campaign, one of those, or our campaigns, let's say, to support them where people were donating to them. Even the Mattel Foundation itself provided $5,000 in support. According to what has been reported, the campaign had a goal of reaching $50,000, that is, to raise $50,000, and they managed to raise more. They raised $94,000, according to what has been reported. Well, that's how things are. According to his wife, they never gave him any royalties. I mean, he did the design and everything and they paid him his salary, but they didn't give him any royalties for being the creator of He-Man. So, Well, that's how things are, right? Many of these creatives, well, they don't live well, you know? I mean, things don't really go well for them. I was telling you a little while ago that I was going to talk to you about what's still happening with Merz, with the German Chancellor. Why? Because basically Merz said a few days ago, honestly, the comments surprised me. Coming from Merz. Because it's Germany, Merz was saying that Iran had been humiliating the United States. In what way? In the comments and by not showing up to meetings, like setting up a meeting and then showing up empty-handed, or saying they'd send someone and then sending no one. We knew we wouldn't accomplish anything at all in the meetings. For Merz, this is like a humiliation. Basically, it's like we're making you waste your time and we're not interested in negotiating. In response to this comment, Donald Trump didn't like it and reacted yesterday. He also said things not criticizing Merz, but saying that the economy in Germany was terrible and so on. The German Chancellor says his relationship with Trump remains good, despite their recent criticisms. The German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, said today that he still has a good opinion of the President of the United States and that their relationship is still good, meaning they still get along well, right? According to this. How have you been? How are you doing? What's new? How are things going? Tell us, please. Meanwhile, let me tell you a couple of interesting things about what's happening in the world. Donald Trump had a meeting today, obviously an urgent one. With whom? With their oil companies. Things are too delicate right now to keep prolonging the situation. So Donald Trump has a meeting with the oil companies to discuss the blockade with Iran and what could happen in the long term. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, met today with top executives from Chevron and other energy companies to talk about measures that could be taken to calm the markets. What are you doing? If the reserves are already released, what else is left to do, right? What would be great, what would be really good, let's say, at this point is, regardless of the oil issue, what the Gulf countries really need to be clear about, in this case, even Asia, Europe, and the United States, they need to be very clear that the next step, the future, let's say, for Iran and the future for the Gulf region should be without power, to be without. Closing the strait, because if every time there's a problem they close the strait, this is going to be an economic problem forever, right? So, what they want is to do something that's enough, either reach an agreement or make some military move in this area that once and for all keeps the strait open so it doesn't cause problems in the future, because otherwise businesses in these countries will be affected. No, useless. All that effort that was made to have these cities, to have these places, well, that's just super, super crazy, right? All these constructions that have been going on here, right? Hotels and things like that, well, they wouldn't make much sense anymore. This is the famous palm, for example, right? Or the palm Jebel Ali. The Lobo Islands, this whole situation, all these luxury places, all the refineries, all of them. Bahrain has advanced greatly in its areas. Yes, okay, they are dictatorships, that's a reality. And they also have their issues and their problems. Some are more open to the world than others. Some have fewer problems with their population than others. Whatever you want. But in the end, there are countries that have prospered. And that prosperity now has its days numbered. If you don't know the Strait of Hormuz, that's how fragile your country's situation is. They wanted to show strength. Well, now they've shown that there isn't any. That strength doesn't exist until they make sure of this. What just happened now with the Strait of Hormuz is the crossing of the strait. Well, maybe it's more important along with this other strait. It's just that this other strait... Yeah, well, here you don't have a bunch of wealthy countries in this area that put a lot of pressure on you. Here they close it off, and what they do is what they did at least last time. In those last years when they would close the strait, well, that was it. And immediately attack, right? There wasn't really any capacity to respond in that sense. On the part of that group, by the way, well, they are. It's a group aligned with Iran, right? You already know that. The President of the United States had this meeting where the Chevron spokesperson already reacted. Mike Wirth attended the meeting to discuss the markets, and the Vice President himself was there, and Ivan was there too. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Trump's Chief of Staff, and Wiles, the Special Envoy, and Steve Wilkoff. That's right, not with Trump anymore. Kushner, They attended the meeting to inform them directly about the negotiations' progress. All the executives, supposedly, I don't really believe this, but anyway, supposedly they praised the measures they're taking and whatever else. And they stated that the president is doing everything right at this moment. That being, well, maybe it's because the price of oil went up. That must be it. I wonder why. Last week, the Trump administration granted a 90-day extension to the Jones Act, also known as the Maritime Transportation Law. With this, the aim is to allow foreign-flagged vessels to transport goods with petroleum products and fertilizers between U.S. ports. Another topic that is also part of those strategic moves. By the way, the sentence for Yoon Suk-yeol is already in. Do you remember this person? This individual, the president who almost carried out a coup d'etat in South Korea recently, just a few months ago. Do you remember? By the way, the sentence is already in. He'll be in prison for 7 years. I had hoped he'd spend his life there. It seemed he'd be there for life, but no, he'll serve 7 years. They even requested a life sentence for being a traitor and more. The point is, they'll give him 7 years in prison? Former president and very well-known places, obstruction of justice, etc. The sentence could still increase. It's not over for him yet, but 7 years would be little for what he was about to do in South Korea. Meanwhile, there is also news from Israel because a discovery Israel made in Lebanon is being revealed in some areas where the IDF is operating. Inside Lebanon, they found a mined well and a weapons post belonging to the terrorist group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. The defense forces located explosives, mortars, and also supplies in clandestine positions attributed to this group. Reserve units. The 226th Brigade of the Israel Defense Forces located a mined well and a permanent post with weapons belonging to the terrorist group Hezbollah. That, well, is also an important part of what is happening in that area. Also, by the way, well, there's a movement, it has been a movement or an attempted movement, at least with one of the figures getting the most attention among Iranians right now, which is this individual right here. Ghalibaf, well, the president of the Iranian parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, says that he is becoming a key figure in the Middle East war. This is the figure who appears most internally now. More or less, it's like, don't forget about him. Abbas Araghchi, well, he's more for external affairs. But from a political point of view, Ghalibaf could be the next important figure. After the elimination of numerous Iranian leaders in joint attacks by the United States and Israel, including the Supreme Leader, Khamenei, and the possible serious injury of Mujtaba, there has been widespread speculation about the balance of power. Ghalibaf would be the most influential figure who has contact with the negotiators with the United States. The enemy has entered, he says, a new phase. He wants to step up economic pressure and stir up internal division through a naval blockade and media manipulation to weaken us or even provoke our collapse from within, he himself declared. He says they are united. He says it's not true that there is a split. That's what he says. Well, it will be difficult. It's hard for me to believe him, honestly. No. He claims that Ghalibaf himself says the United States planned a coup. During the war, the United States tried to infiltrate forces into Isfahan, calling it the disgrace of Tabas II. That's what he calls it. He claims that the United States tried 6 separate plans to overthrow Iran during the war, and that all 6 failed, according to this individual. That's the moderate one. That's the calm one. Well, that's how things stand on that topic. Meanwhile, let's move on to other important matters. Well, the next point is also worth noting. Let's check if we have the image. I believe we do. We'll check it right now, but these images of trucks with the flag of Iran and flags from over there have been circulating. Yes. Where they shout really terrible things at Jewish communities in London. A caravan. We're going to go with Arab flags. They didn't start circulating. Circulating in trucks, in luxury trucks, by the way, in Jewish neighborhoods. I mean, over there in England, where there are Jewish neighborhoods, those trucks went in and started moving around there. They were using loudspeakers. What I'm about to tell you is really terrible, but that's what happened, and honestly, it's really awful. That's a caravan of people shouting very harsh, very strong slogans. Very regrettable things against the Jewish community, but really brutal things, really, and this happening in a European country really catches my attention. Thank you. Well, they were shouting. I can't say it. It's that simple. No, I couldn't say it here. It's straightforward. But, well, it's unfortunate. That's what's happening in that regard. Huh? Yes, you can see one, just like you said. Okay, let's see. These are supposed to be groups that have been around for a long time over there in England, in those countries. They're supposed to, well, let's say, think a little differently about things. They're supposed to be less radical. And suddenly, with the comments they make with the megaphones, you think, wait a minute. What do you mean? Are you aware of the consequences for these groups? Not a single one, not even one, not even like, hey, what you're saying is totally illegal. How is that possible? Well, it's an amazing thing, isn't it? And that creates polarization and, in the end, possible internal clashes within the United Kingdom. Huh? Well, another thing as well. It draws attention. It's not this image. Let's see if we can put it here. It's the moment when a helicopter is attacked. A helicopter that had been destroyed. This was thanks to a drone. According to reports, 2 helicopters were the ones that attacked Russian Mi-8 helicopters and a Mi-24 attack helicopter which were parked at an improvised airfield, 150 kilometers behind the front line in the Voronezh region. Well, that's where they were attacked, leaving them unusable. They're targets for drones, right? That's also extremely important. The moves they're making in this military matter are truly amazing. It's surprising how this war not only doesn't end, but every day there are attacks. It's unbelievable. Many people are likely tired and don't want to discuss it, but this is the news. In the end, we have to talk about it. We have to observe them. By the way, it's also surprising how the Tuab fire is still going, how you can see the fire from a plane. It's amazing what these wars cause in terms of climate, in terms of pollution. I mean, there must be a strong effect, a tremendous effect, that's all. We have to keep an eye on what's happening in the Gulf of Humanos. Things are starting to appear in that area. Hundreds of thousands of shrimp dead, apparently without a leak. Nothing, but obviously there's something going on underwater that's taking their lives. I mean, these little animals are dying, not those little crabs. I mean, little shrimp. Well, that's also something that stands out today. Let's move on to other matters, other topics. Let's go to your comments. Let's go to comments. Let's go then. How have you been? How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us for this morning's live broadcast. Well, big greetings to the whole community. Edwin, how have you been? Big greetings. Eliseo, Roshi, the magical Luna, greetings all the way to Spain. Amelia, how are you? How have you been? Check it out. There's another one that says hello. See, I told you the ones saying hello show up. Greetings, Master Shifu. Greetings, Master Shifu. Big greetings. How are things going? Well, no. For me, it's suddenly hard to tell Master Shifu, Don Draper, and the Master of Chameleons apart. No, I guess it's Don Draper, right? I think so. Well, anyway, big shout out to Don. He says, wow, in Korea too, the law wins. Is Peanut allowed? Yes, the law always wins, Don, Tine, no. He says, Mercedes, how have you been? Big shout out. How are you two over there? He says, Master Shifu, it isn't over and won't be. Countries are turning their economies into war economies. Unfortunately, that's the approach they're taking, and it's a huge business, isn't it? I mean, it's not just about, what do they call it, ammunition, right? And weapons, right? I mean, it's an issue that goes beyond that. Looking elite, yes. And yeah, if it's things like that, I mean, with so many more interesting things to invest in, right? But anyway, it's one of the things that surprises me, yeah, that sometimes I stop because the information is just like that, you know? Just imagine, for us, it's information every single day. But suddenly we stop ourselves, right? I mean, from this news story, you already realize the importance of this news, right? And suddenly you listen and you reflect on news from a day ago, 2 days ago. I've been thinking a lot about the news on Mars, and I just discussed it with my oldest son. I mean, this one about Mars that I mentioned yesterday, I think it was about how they discover things. I mean, obviously, it's already known that every so often the path from Mars to Earth gets shorter. That's very well known, very common knowledge. The distance between Mars and Earth periodically decreases. But since there are many observers, many scientists watching meteors and so on, so they started to observe. What if we observe the meteors of different sizes and all that, the ones that pass through there? Let's see how long it takes them to travel toward Mars, right? To reach Mars. And they realized that every so often the meteors arrive much faster than they thought. They said, hey, we can go at that same speed and get there in much less time than we had said. And that reduces costs, reduces risks, and makes the trip to Mars much more likely every few years. In 2031, that conjunction will happen, so to speak, that special moment when humans could go to Mars and return in the same year. I mean, go there, stay for a while, come back, and it would only take a year, so that would be incredible, right? So, if the ships are ready and the special suits, because the suits aren't ready yet, there's much more radiation than on the moon. So, they don't know what they're going to do. And besides, it would be a year-long trip. I mean, it's a year of physical strain. Well, okay. Once they send me, I'll let you know, like you said, greetings. How are you, Omar? Michael, 283 greetings all the way to Miami. Very good, greetings. It says a war against barbarism, Islamic fundamentalism, and the rest of the world is in danger because of the messianic fanatics who go to their deaths, like some who are just good at greetings. How have you been? GP Belmont. Very good, greetings. Judy, greetings. Dear baby says greetings. I always watch you from Bogota, Colombia. Thank you very much. Huge greetings. Judy, how have you been? Thank you so much for joining us. How are things in Colombia? It's been very hectic these last few days, hasn't it? Well, a lot of news has been coming in here about these attacks that have happened. I don't know if things are starting to calm down a bit, but what do you think? He says that Valdo was asking how you were. He says that in the United States, they're trying to bring back firing squads. It's crazy, but yeah. Yep, exactly. They're considering bringing back firing squads. I mean, firing squads like in other times, right? That's an idea that's being discussed right now. It's intense. Leonardo Pepe tells me, he says, for me, the sentence for the former president of Korea is too light, because if the leader of North Korea had been involved, he could have, yes, what this President Yoon Suk-yeol did was very serious. I mean, they were mainly investigating his wife for buying some luxury bags. And one, that they also gave him those gifts. They said, hey, wait, here are the laws, and that's corruption. So then the problem kept growing and growing, and he didn't want them to investigate. And so what he does is send a drone from South Korea. He sends a drone to North Korea. He interferes with the North, and they shoot it down or it crashes there, whatever. All of that is a provocation so that North Korea would attack something, maybe something minor. South Korea would attack, and he could say, hacemos una... Because they, under a law of war or something like that, can shut down the legislature. So with that, he avoided being investigated. He acted like the brave one, like, look, I'm facing Kim Jong-un. They don't go to war. Maybe they risk that. The tension rises, but he gets away with it. He says, oh, look, now I'm out of it, and I look like the one who stood up to Kim Jong-un, even though there hasn't been a war. I mean, he calculated something like that, right? The other calculation would be, well, maybe he thought that if there was a war, that he was even crazier. We don't know how far he calculated this would go. The craziest thing is that Kim Jong-un doesn't react. I mean, he does get angry. He says, don't send me these women or whatever. And, you know, he launched 2 or 3 missiles into the sea and got all worked up and everything, but he didn't attack. people in South Korea began investigating who launched the missile, who sent the drone, and how it happened. And everything showed that, well, it was a strategy mainly because when that strategy didn't work, he still wanted to seize the legislature by force, and he sent soldiers to seize it by force. I know most of you remember, but I'm bringing it up in case some don't recall how things were. And then you say, hey, wait a minute, if Kim Jong-un didn't even react, why? Why was he almost declaring martial law, trying to take away powers? Why? So everyone said, no, this trickster, he's just going around, he learned from others, right? And he wants to control the country by force. So, luckily, the legislature refused to leave, the congressmen closed the doors, blocked them, and the military was already banging on the windows to get in. They immediately draft a nullification of the president's order and tell the military about the annulment of that rule. The military reads it, says okay, and steps back, leaving everything. Because why? I mean, the military were going to do what the president said because that's the law. If the president says this, then it was going to be done. The moment they broke down the door of Congress, they took the congressmen and removed them, and Congress was over. But luckily, Congress managed to get it out in time. This annulment is presented and they say, here we are in a live session in Congress, and the law or the rule, the president's order is annulled, right? But it was like that, I mean, heroes, the congressmen in that sense, right? They barely released her. Even the same party, the president voted for that one. That issue was crazy. But yeah, well, it was a really intense topic, he says. Like I told you, I don't think they needed to go to Mars, but we still came from there, he says. How are you, Eliseo? Hello, greetings. There it is. The survey is in the community area in case you'd like to participate, and also leave your comment if you want, right? That would be great too. Cesar, how have you been? He says it's about the United States. They want to ask China to use Mexico, he says, as a gateway for Chinese goods into their territory. It's complicated, he says. Yes, and it's China and Canada. I mean, not just Mexico, I mean also Canada. Brands are coming in over there, and the thing is, like you said, it's complex, really complex, because to begin with, look, just look. Walmart from the United States is practically almost the biggest buyer of Chinese products by itself. I mean, Walmart, a classic American company, depends heavily on what the Chinese make. I mean, the United States itself consumes a lot of Chinese products. So, wanting to take a stand too? I mean, yes, I understand that certain things have to be limited because otherwise many key industries would collapse, but you can't limit it completely. Or break an agreement of this magnitude. I mean, what would that be? Because breaking that agreement then frees you and says, well, then let me go do more business with China. I mean, if I can't make deals with you anymore, then let me either hold off with China or make deals with whoever else. But I think it's better to be united than to be divided.
O sea, es como que la lógica de...
And with certain rules and whatever you want, right? But yes, good point, Cesar. I mean, yes, it's definitely a complex system, and maybe we should discuss it more in depth later on. Thank you so much, Gabriel. A big hello. How have you been, Gabriel? What's new? He says, I think going to Mars, but, oh, well, did you already talk about it? He says, I think that robots and trucks and autonomous cars need to have a really good security system. Because if they get hacked, just imagine, yes, of course, I mean, they need to be ultra, super, mega secure, right? I mean, that would be ideal. Exactly. Well, I'll keep reading comments. Greetings, it says, thank you very much. Okay. Greetings, Omar. Greetings all the way to Miami. How have you been? Hello, it says. Okay. Big greetings, Mercedes. How have you been? Awesome. Let me check it a bit more. If we don't have any pending images, I think that's it. Oh, this one is still missing. This is a post that, well, the FBI made according to what they're showing. Let's see. There it is, a launcher. The FBI publishes images of rocket launchers from Hezbollah located inside a civilian property in southern Lebanon. Well, they're still operating, aren't they? Division 91 would be directing this launcher towards Israel and the FBI troops, since in the area they reportedly attacked that building, according to what has been shown. Apparently the launchers, towers. Well, actually, the buildings that are there, especially in the southern area, most of them are still cleared of civilians, at least in theory.
Aunque hay que recordar que
People are already desperate. They want to go back. I mean, the people from southern Lebanon who are usually Shiites want to return. They want to go back now. And that's also important, definitely, right? Before we move on to something else, before we go to other topics, let me just check how is the oil situation going. And later tonight, we'll analyze what the consequences are. That would also be interesting. Well, look, it's still at 118, right? Here it is. Look, there it is. 118 is the current price. 118.14.
we'll see.
And, well, we'll see, right? It won't pick up again until 5 in the afternoon, and at 5 in the afternoon, the ups and downs start again, which is when Asia opens. So let's wait a little longer, and we'll be watching today as well. When oil goes up, the dollar usually goes up too, right? It happens. For example, look at the dollar and the peso right now. I mean, the dollar went up, that's in relation to the peso, but the euro too. Look, the euro also went up, so that's the dollar. Well, once again, recovering a little bit of it, right? From the drop it's had in the last few days, well, it's starting to recover again. I mean, it's a recovery that still has a way to go because it dropped. I mean, first oil goes up, the dollar goes up because of the euro, and it stays like that for a while, and then it goes back down again. And now that oil is going up again, the dollar goes up again too. So basically, when oil goes up, the dollar goes up, right? That's what we're probably going to be seeing in the next few days, the famous petrodollar, right? That's also important, that point. Let's keep reading comments before we go. No. Okay, it says, I wouldn't like China to invade us with their products, which many are because they're cheap, says Hioles. I think that's something from another time. I don't know. MT. It also depends because they produce at different levels, right? They can make you a Huawei computer or a Huawei phone. I've already had that kind of brand. And wow, I mean, if it surprises you, honestly, that's good. And that was like 5 or 6 years ago, and I still miss certain features it had. That phone was really, really good. And we've also had computers from other countries. Right now, I'm using a custom-built PC, and probably half of the parts are from there. So they have their own strengths depending on the area, depending on the brand. DJI, for example, DJI. They're really good at drones and microphones too, by the way. They've specialized in certain things. It's not like Sony, Nikon, all those brands that specialized in photography. Some are Japanese, others are from Canada. The point is that,
Pues hay sus especialidades.
right? And they've managed to build some pretty strong brands, right? Well, someone else has told me. So that's 3 comments now. There's Vicente Navarro. I don't know what he said. Hello. See, that's what I mean. These mysterious comments just show up. He said hello? How? What does it mean? Did Vicente say hello? Vicente Navarro, can you tell us something else? No, he's not going to comment on anything. He says it's a chat feature. He says, do you think so? Well, I send my regards anyway to Vicente and to those who said he said hello, but it seems strange to me. I find it curious. He says, MT, is China making rapid advances in science and technology? Yes, I think so. They're advancing very quickly. They're advancing very fast. In the end, they've followed a model very similar to the Japanese one, when at the time, well, Japan copied things and then developed on their own in an impressive way. When they started out with their first video games, they copied them from the ones that American soldiers brought, the classic fighting arcade machines.
Y Japón los revolucionó.
As we know, Japan's video game industry is impressive. But in the beginning, they were copies. Basically, they were pirated. At first, it was more or less the same model. China followed the same path too. At first, they were basically knockoffs, and later they reinvented themselves. I mean, if you ever get the chance, try one of these brands. Like I said, Xiaomi, for example. I'm really interested in one of those phones. And the computers, man, they're really impressive. That's how they are. The problem for me, and why not stick with Huawei? It's because the people from the United States started putting restrictions on them. And well, I use a lot of platforms from there, obviously. So I said no, it's not worth it. And besides, I'm also a big fan of Samsung, which is Korean and a very good brand, and that's the phone I'm using right now. And I think if I'm going to switch, I'll either switch to Samsung or to Apple. Why? Because for video streaming on cell phones, they're the most stable. Especially the combination with the microphone. This microphone is DJI. That's a Chinese brand. A very good microphone. Really good. I've had this microphone for years now. I mean, check it out. The quality of the product is really good. I'm not advertising, but just look at the little microphone. There are two microphones. Right?
Son estos, ¿no? O sea,
This is the transmitter. This is the one that goes on the phone or camera and sends the signal to the lavaliers, which are these. And each one, you know, they have a ton of features. They're really good, really good. They last a long time. I mean, they're really cool. But, well, this little thing is about 8,000 pesos, so it's not cheap either. I mean, but they'll last you for many years. You know, you'll have it for years and it'll keep working for you and be really useful, right? This is Huawei, for example. It's already old. Astrid gave it to me as a gift. The watch for working out, I use it every day. I wear it. I don't know, like 5 or 6 years. I mean, this little watch has been around for a while. I don't know. Astrid, I left it in the comment, but I've had it for several years. I think at least 5, and also, well, no problem, right? I've hit it, I've dropped it, it's been through everything. No, it's really good. That's Huawei. And it connects to any phone, like an iPhone, a Samsung, whatever, right? He says, greetings, how have you been? Vicente Valdo MT says, I agree, says they have 30% of it is good, 70% isn't. MT says, cheers, Cesar brings me in, how have you been? Hello, warm greetings, well, let's keep going, let's keep talking, right? We keep talking. Hope you're all doing well. Have an excellent day. Tonight, see you here. During the evening broadcast, we'll be here talking. With great pleasure and a big hug to the community. Hope you're all well. Leave comments if you're watching the replay and let us know if we should make videos longer, shorter, or not at all. Leave a comment if you reach this point in the broadcast. See you later.